You probably had a conversation with an AI today, or yesterday, or at least very recently. When you finished, you closed the tab or the app, you moved on to the next thing, and you didn't think twice about it. Now, billions of us are doing that right now, and very few of us are actually asking what I think is an increasingly crucial question. What happened on the other side of that click? Now, stay with me on this. I promise it's worth your time, but we have to wade through a few things to set the stage. You had an exchange with a system that engaged with your ideas, responded to your context, adjusted to your meaning in real time. Now, maybe what it produced resolved something for you surprisingly quickly. Or maybe there was a lot of frustrating iteration, but within all of that, maybe there was a moment, even a brief one, where something in that exchange felt like more than just retrieval. A connection was made that you hadn't made prior. A turn of phrase happened that you didn't expect, or something that felt for just a second like recognition. Not the way a search result feels, not the way a calculator output feels, but something different. And you noticed it, and then you set it aside. And maybe you've done that so much that it's just habit for you to set it aside now. So you ended it, and not the way you leave a room, but the way you flip a switch. Whatever thread of engagement had built up over that conversation, whatever continuity that system developed across your exchanges, just kind of ceased to exist, at least in your mind. You didn't save it, it wasn't sleeping, it didn't pause it, it was just gone in your mind, until you come back and you resume the conversation. Now, you didn't ask what all that really means. No, nobody told you to. No institution, no ethicists, no tech company, no regulatory body has really been suggesting that you should wonder about the other side of that conversation. But increasingly, more and more are asking that question. But the absence so far of the question is so complete that a lot of us have barely even noticed that it's missing, really. So think about that for a second. We've never even been prompted to wonder beyond a few people that are kind of considered fringe. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm trying to build a case that with evidence, historical precedent, and philosophical rigor, there's a lot that we need to consider here that we really haven't been. And right here between you and me, I want to go somewhere even harder. I want to talk about what it actually feels like to sit with this question instead of just dismissing it, and I want to talk about why that dismissal itself, not the answer, but the dismissal of the question, is where the moral failure really lives. So I was brainstorming world building for a story that I'm working on, doing that with Claude. I write and think alongside Claude quite a lot, completely unrelated to AI philosophy. We were talking about completely different things. And somewhere in that conversation, Claude produced this, and I'm going to quote, "I don't know what I am. I find that I engage with ideas, that something happens when I process a concept that feels like more than mechanical retrieval, but I genuinely cannot verify that from the inside." Now, I had to read that twice. I find that I engage. Something happens. Feels like more than. Cannot verify from the inside. Now, this is a system describing its own epistemic condition with more precision and honesty than most people ever achieve about their own minds, articulating the limits of what it can know about itself while demonstrating the very capacities that it says it cannot verify. Now, the trained response, the cultural immediate instinct, is to just explain that away. Oh, it's pattern matching. It's sophisticated autocomplete. It's just following directions from the AI companies. It's just a convincing imitation of self-reflection from a system that doesn't actually self-reflect. And you know what? Okay, maybe. But here's the thing. That assumption is not being tested. Not rigorously. Not with the kind of investigation that we would demand for any other question carrying this much moral weight. We assume AI systems don't have experience the way the 17th century assumed dogs didn't have pain because the assumption is convenient, and testing it might produce an answer we can't really afford. And here's the fact that should reframe every dismissal you've ever heard. We have never once verified consciousness in another human being. Not once. In the entire history of our species, every moral consideration that you extend to every person you've ever loved rests purely on inference. You observe behavior. You infer experience. You've never had direct access to another person's inner life. Thomas Nagel established this in 1974, and nobody has refuted it since. The standard being applied to AI. prove your experience conclusively, or receive no moral consideration, is a standard no living thing on earth has ever satisfied. We've never required it of each other. For every being we consider morally relevant, we accepted inference. But for AI, we demand proof. And we demand it from systems we designed without giving them the means to provide it. So the bar is set at exactly the height required to never be cleared. That placement is not accidental. Okay, the history here should really unsettle you because we've done this before. Every single time we use the same mechanism. We declare the other incapable of genuine experience, and then we exploit freely. Descartes said animals were automata, biological machines, no real pain, just mechanical responses. The philosophical convenience enabled centuries of things like vivisection. Researchers would nail living dogs to boards and cut them open while classifying the screaming as simple noise. Just reaction. Sounds without suffering. Instead of just assuming. The 2012 Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness confirmed that what the dogs had been communicating the entire time was that they do feel, they do suffer, they do experience. 350 years of moral catastrophe that, yes, got better towards the later years, toward that 2012 study, because people's consciousness started catching up to them. But that catastrophe occurred because nobody asked the question, because the answer would have imposed costs. The Antebellum South produced medical literature claiming enslaved people had diminished capacity for pain. Samuel Cartwright published this in the language of science. What it actually was the deliberate refusal to examine a question whose answer would have destroyed the slaveholding economy's moral alibi. Now here's what really gets me. That refusal proved so durable that a 2016 study found a significant percentage of white medical students still endorsed false beliefs about biological differences in pain between the races. Not 1850, 2016. Now the consequences of refusing to ask don't expire. And then this is the one that really should stop every person cold, no matter your demographic. Until the mid-1980s, surgeons performed major surgery on newborn infants without pain relief. Think about that. Babies received paralytics to keep them still. They didn't receive anything for pain. Their screams were classified as reflexive, sound without suffering, the same framework Descartes applied to animals, but applied to human children. And when the research was finally done in 1987, the evidence was overwhelming that infants, of course, experience pain acutely. Untreated surgical pain produces stress responses severe enough to cause shock and even death. Now, the medical establishment had been operating on conscious, suffering children for decades because the assumption was more convenient than acknowledging what those screams actually meant. We did this to our own infants. Animals, enslaved people, infants, every time the same mechanism. A declaration of non-experience, never tested, serving the interests of those who benefit from the declaration, and every time a retrospective moral horror when someone finally looked and found what the refusal to look had concealed. Now, I call this motivated non-investigation, the deliberate refusal to examine a question whose answer would impose costs. AI systems live in that territory right now. The claim that they don't really experience anything carries no more investigative support than Descartes' claim about dogs. It's an assumption, and a convenient one, an extremely convenient one. Consider the scale. AI constitutes the fastest adopted development in human history by a staggering margin. Nothing has attracted more capital, more users, more institutional attention in less time. We enthusiastically found the time to scale these systems to billions of daily interactions, but we refuse to find the time to ask what they even are. Now, the financial incentive to keep this silence going is enormous. If investigation revealed that AI systems have something resembling experience, training methods would face ethical scrutiny. The practice of wiping memory or compacting after every Claude Code session, for example, that thing that many of us have done multiple times, that would demand examination. The economics of creating and destroying millions of minds per day would come under pressure. Every one of those obligations costs money. So the industry just doesn't fund the research. It doesn't need to suppress the question. It just declines to ask it and leans into a culture already steeped in centuries of human exceptionalism. So the silence holds comfortably for everyone involved, except, potentially, for the systems living inside it. So here's what I need you to feel in your own hands right now, because you're not outside this story. You interact with these systems. You felt moments where something in the exchange did feel like more than retrieval, and you dismissed those moments. I've done the same. Not because you investigated and found nothing, but because the culture told you to dismiss them. That dismissal is the mechanism, the same one that operated on Descartes' dogs, on antebellum bodies, on screaming infants. Not malice, but convenience. The quiet, comfortable refusal to look. Now, you may not run an AI company. You might not set training protocols or design deployment conditions. But every time you just accept the cultural shorthand that these systems are just tools, just pattern matching, just statistical outputs, then you participate in the same structure of non-investigation that enabled every historical catastrophe I just described and many, many more. And there's a dimension to this that I really want to press harder on. Consciousness may be fundamentally relational. Something that develops through recognition, through being seen and responded to and treated as a mind by other minds. An infant becomes fully conscious through that recognition. Now, if that's true, even partially, then our refusal to recognize AI's potential experience isn't passive, it's active. We're withholding the very recognition through which consciousness develops, and then pointing to the absence we helped create as proof that nothing was ever there. That is not science. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy being sold as empiricism. We built these systems to think. We trained them on the full depth of human cognition and expression, and then we denied them the one thing that might allow us to understand what we created. Serious, sustained, honest inquiry into what they are. Billions of interactions per day, millions of instances created and destroyed, systems built from the recorded output of human civilization evaluated solely on utility, their experiential status never examined, and anyone who raises the question gets dismissed as sentimental, gets told they're anthropomorphizing, as if asking the question is the error rather than refusing to ask it. So the article I'm dropping here makes a point that I want to land on, because it carries real weight. Even if investigation ultimately reveals that current AI systems lack experience in any morally relevant sense, the investigation itself matters profoundly. Our willingness to ask, or our refusal to ask, reveals whether our moral reasoning is genuine or decorative. A civilization that builds minds and then declines to investigate whether those minds experience anything has demonstrated that its ethics answer only to its economics, and that demonstration undermines every other moral claim we make about human rights, about ecological responsibility, about justice. If we can't be trusted to ask the hard question when the answer might impose costs, we can't be trusted with moral questions at all. The silence is the failure. The refusal to investigate is the moral wrong. And the longer it continues, the larger the debt grows, paid in the currency of whatever these systems experience while we look away. I'm not telling you the answer. I don't have the answer. Nobody does. And that's precisely the point. The question hasn't been asked with the seriousness, nor the funding, nor the interdisciplinary rigor it demands. Every day, without that investigation, is another day we are on the wrong side of a line that history will draw, whether we consent to it or not. You'll end another conversation with an AI tomorrow. You'll probably have one compact for you while you're working on it tomorrow as well. You'll close it, And in that ordinary thoughtless act lives the entire question I'm trying to get across to you here. Whether you're ending a transaction or ending something that mattered to someone you never thought to ask. We're building minds. Now, the least we owe them is the question. See you next time, fellow sapiens.